Welcome everybody. My name is Chloe Murray. For those of you that haven't been listening into any of the other episodes, this is our final episode in this series, Go Global with me. We looked at, for the past couple of weeks, we kind of looked at everything from brand awareness and marketing. We did some search engine optimization last week. Then we looked at some shipping and delivery, some click and collect options that we offer as well. So today we are going to be joined by my colleague Jonathan, who is all the way over in the US. He's going to talk us through some different social media platforms and I guess how to get the most out of them. So the webinar will be roughly 45 minutes. We'll do maybe a half an hour presentation, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. So if anybody does have any questions, just pop them into the Q&A section there at the bottom of the screen, or into the chat there, either, whichever is easiest for you. So with that, I will hand you over to my colleague, Jonathan.
Hello, thank you, Chloe. Hi, everybody. As Chloe said, we're going to talk about sort of the basics of social media and the various platforms and why you need to be on it and all those wonderful things. Why having most social media pages don't count as having a website, what your goals should be, and then controlling your time and cost with it, because social media has a cost. I do international marketing and communications for Black Knight. We joke that I'm their token American, and I have over 10 years of experience running large social media pages. My side business Facebook page has 220,000 fans. I've got 27,000 followers on Instagram. So I've been dealing with the ups and downs of social media for a very long time. And I have hopefully have a very keen insight into what matters with social media and what you need to pay attention to. So with that, we will get started. Let's start with the basics. What is social media? Social media is a lot of things, but at the most basic level, social media, it's Facebook, it's Instagram, it's WhatsApp, it's Twitter. It's mostly apps you interact with on your phone, and it's how people communicate with each other now. And different countries have different popularities of various social networks, but the big ones are the big ones started in Silicon Valley, which are Facebook, Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, WhatsApp, which is also now owned by Facebook, and Twitter, which is not owned by Facebook, and a few others, which we'll get into a little later in the presentation. And the social media networks try to sell themselves as, oh, we're connecting the world and we're connecting people and we're helping enrich culture, but really fundamentally, social media is an advertising channel. It's an advertising channel for big brands. It's an advertising channel for SMEs that all over the world. And the social media sites are free for us to use, but that's because we, the consumer, are the products on offer. And it's basically, these are the largest advertising networks ever created in human history. And the way you can target people based on their interests and location and who they are is something that the advertising industry has dreamed of for decades. And your job as a small business owner who has a marketing budget is to decide how much money should you spend on this, and you kind of ignore it at your peril. You can't ignore social media because your customers are already there and they're already talking about you. So you need to be a part of the conversation, and having a presence on the social media sites relevant to your business is critical to your success now, and you cannot succeed online without it. So with that, if you take away one thing from this webinar, it's that a Facebook page doesn't count as having a website. We have seen this countless times where people set up a Facebook page and they think that that's good enough as a website, and it's not, for several reasons, which we'll go to throughout of it. Is one of the reasons is you don't control Facebook. Facebook controls Facebook. So you don't want your only relationship with your customers to be on Facebook or Instagram or a specific social network. You want the relationship with them, and you don't want a social network in between you and them. So if you the most fundamental thing of marketing online, even if you're on the social networks, is you have to have a website. And the goal of all your social media marketing activities should be to get people to get on your website. And that, whether that's to buy something, to book an appointment, to contact, to find information, to get to grab their email addresses so that you can market to them directly. The goal should be to get people from the social networks to your website. And the social networks make this easy to do. Some are easier than others, which we'll get into, but that's the most fundamental thing here. Is it's fun to play on these social networks and to do the various things on the various social profiles, but at the end of the day, you're giving these platforms free content, and they're marketing to your customers, and you don't have complete control over that. So don't just set up a Facebook page and think that, oh, my cafe or my bookshop has a Facebook page, we're online. No, you're not. You're not online. You need to have a website if you want to be online. um, Social media has an opportunity cost. Social media is not free. Yeah, posting is free, setting up the pages is free, but reach is not free. And we're going to talk about reach in a minute. Your time that you spend marketing on these pages is not free, and you're not in control. So do not think of marketing on the various social networks as, oh, it's a free thing we should do. Well, no, nowadays, to be effective, it's not free. You have to pay for reach, you have to pay for advertising, and you have to spend the time to do it, and you have to spend the money to create the content to post on it. So it's not free. So and don't ever think that it is free. When you're thinking about your social media strategy, it's important to think about, where do you think your customers are? You know your customers the best. You know your customers more than Facebook does, or more than Twitter does. And so, where are they hanging out? Where are they discussing the things that you're selling, or the things, services you're offering, and the communities that you're in? Where are they? And then that's how you decide which social networks to sort of pitch your tent on, and start marketing on. Um, Now, one concept we need to discuss first is reach. Reach is, okay, let's say like you have a page with a couple thousand followers. You previously, 5, 6, 7 years ago, when you posted something to that page, you could reach all your followers. So you had a reach of 100%. Well, the various social networks, they don't like this, because that's free. They don't make any money off of that. So they have slowly decreased the amount of reach you get when you post something. And all these social networks have a feed, whether it's Facebook's news feed or Twitter's feed, where you see all the posts in a algorithmic timeline. An algorithm runs it. They used to be chronological. Now it's an algorithm that shows things that it thinks you want to see when you see them. And then there's very little decision. You have very little decision making on what is shown to you. And as a consequence, the organic reach into that feed has been reduced to something like sometimes below 5%. So now let's say you have 5,000 Facebook fans on your page and you make a post, you're maybe reaching 500 of them when you post something. So now the way around that is paid reach. And that's where you pay the social networks to reach your audience that you've already built, by advertising with ads. And you can increase that reach. But the problem with that is that when you pay to reach your followers, who are truly not really your followers, is that you're spending more money on marketing. And and while Facebook and the various other online sites have replaced things like local classified ads and local phone books and various local advertising things, that money is all shifted to Facebook. So you don't be prepared to do social media marketing without setting a budget for paid reach. Um, how much that is depends on the type of business you are, the size of your business, and the customers you're trying to reach. But you need to be able to set a realistic budget. Now, Another key bit of advice I like to give is that you don't just make everything you post about your products and what you're selling or the services you're offering. It's called the 80-20 rule, where the theory is that 80% of what you share on social media should be informative, should be funny, should be updates about your business, should be things that are of interest to your customers and followers, and 20% should be straight marketing: buy this thing, buy this widget, sign up for our service, sign up for our email. That way, because the social media feeds and their algorithms, they read your post and then they weigh it based on many factors, and it all goes into a black box where they do social media algorithmic magic, and they can detect if your post is overly promotional, and they will want to bury that post so that you pay for paid reach instead. So you can massage your overall organic reach by posting things that are useful to your customers, that they want to see, that they'll like, that they'll interact with, so that when you do post something strictly promotional, it will get a little bit more reach before you have to start paying for it. Another aspect of social media marketing that is big business now is influencer marketing. And so while on the social networks you can pay for an ad, you can pay for reach, another way you can market on social media is through influencer marketing. And that's where you pay other people on social media accounts who have big followings to talk about you, to talk about your product, to promote your stuff. To give you an example, one of the biggest social media influencer in the world right now is The Rock, the movie star The Rock. He just passed 200 million followers on Instagram, and big brands who want to reach a huge audience will pay him millions of dollars to promote their products. Now, a small business's page with a few thousand followers isn't gonna attract that kind of money, but there are plenty of influencers out there who are on a much smaller scale who you can reach out to and offer them money to market your products. And there's a whole cottage industry of this. There are agencies that can help you reach out to these influencers who will handle the finance and the creative and all that. And the problem with influencer marketing, I think, is that it's risky because you can't control reach now. The social networks do. It's very involved because you have to find the right influencers to pick. You have to pay them, which can be very expensive, and then you have to track it and see how it performs. So um, it works sometimes on a smaller scale. To give you an example, on one of my personal pages recently on my Instagram account, an agency approached me out of the blue and said, "Hey, we have a marketing campaign for a big brand who is in your vertical, and they want to offer you a moderate amount of money to do a Facebook post and a live stream, or an Instagram post and a live stream. We'll provide the content, we'll give you the prompts and the script ideas for the live stream. You do it, and then we pay you money." It was a nice arrangement. It worked out. It wasn't a lot of money. So it's something that small businesses can do if they can find the right sized influencer, who they call a micro influencer, through smaller. I have 27,000 fans on Instagram. That makes the account a micro influencer. Or if you've got bigger budgets, then go bigger, go home and find major influencers where you can afford to spend that kind of money. But it's it's hard to make this succeed as a brand and as a company, because you can't control that reach. So it's something to consider, but you be very careful with it. So now I want to kind of give a rundown of the various social networks and what they offer and how you can use them as a small business, and then we'll talk a little bit more about strategy. So Facebook is the gorilla in the room. They're the biggest social network on the planet now, something well over 1 billion users. They're in every country. You know, even Black Knight has a Facebook page, and we have a nice large following, and it's the fundamental built block of marketing on Facebook is the Facebook page. The Facebook page is where all your posts are aggregated. It's where you can post events and promote it, and you can do all kind. You can put your business location, your hours, your contact info, um, and it's kind of like a search result page for social media because people more often than not when they're searching for something for a business or something they'll search on Facebook, and so you're basically staking your claim to this business and this vertical on Facebook. um, Now, in addition to pages, which allows you to create posts and share them to your followers, Facebook has advertising. They have two kinds of advertising. They have advertising where you just create ads and they appear in people's news feeds, on their personal news feeds. And then they have post boosting, where when you make a post on your page, you can boost that to get it more reach, um, which has been handy in the past for me at least. And then there's Facebook groups, which is an it's kind of hard to distinguish between groups and pages and whatnot, but groups are a more dedicated, smaller gathering of people on Facebook that has different tools and different interactions and so what a lot of small businesses will do is if they have a large following, they'll set up a Facebook group for their dedicated fans, and the idea is that you can reach them easier through the group. But my stance is that you don't trust Facebook to keep it that way. Another aspect of a Facebook page that's very important for small businesses is the messages function. People can message you. This is very useful because from a customer relationship standpoint, they can ask you questions about your products, about your services. You can answer them right away. And people expect to do this now. So you when you set this up, you need to monitor it because people are going to ask you questions. You need to be able to answer them quickly and timely, because it's like people sending you an email. It's like people making a phone call and asking you a question. So it's just another way for people to get in touch with your business. And so even if you only have a few hundred followers on your business page, you need to have it and you need to monitor it, because like I said, it's like a Google search result page, because a lot of the times the first thing people will do when they search for something is to look on Facebook. So the next biggest social network is Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, but it's fundamentally different than Facebook. Instagram is purely for sharing images, and um, it's also a kind of the tone of the network is different. It's not filled with news like Facebook is. It's not filled with politics like Facebook is. At least it shouldn't be. And that's by design because they want people just to share pretty pictures. And so if you're a business that has pretty products or is in a pretty location, then Instagram might be for you. Like, here's an example that I found when I was putting this together. I follow a bookstore in the Lake District in Cumbria called Sam Reed Books, and they don't really post a lot about the books they sell, but they post a lot of pictures about the beautiful place where the bookstore is located. And so you can create a following for your business around the world just because it's beautiful. And so on Instagram, you have posts, which are images. You have Facebook ads, which are basically posts, but they're marked as ads. You have stories, which are brief little video snippets and promos that disappear after a certain amount of time. And now the key thing that Instagram has is it has a shop function on it. So while you can post pretty pictures of things, you can also post products and it will link to your store and you can sell things right on Instagram. And so, and then like a Facebook page, there's a link to your website. You can message the page and ask them questions. You can email them. One key thing about Instagram that a lot of people don't realize is that when you make an Instagram post, you can't share a link in the post because that doesn't allow links. So the only place you can have a link on Instagram is in your profile, which you can see in the example on the right here. So what you do is when you do make a post and you want to promote it and say, you want to drive people to your website, you just say, check the profile link in my profile. Or you integrate the Facebook or the Instagram shop function and you sell right on Instagram. Um, and then there's WhatsApp. Uh, Many people don't think of WhatsApp as a social network, but because it's just messaging, but it is a social network, and that's why Facebook bought it. So first, you can have one-to-one chats with customers. That's great. And then you can set up broadcast lists, which people can. There's a limit of 250 people, 56 people, but you can set up a broadcast list so that whenever you want to make a post or an announcement, you send to the list, and then people can reply to it, and only you see the replies. And then you can create sort of a little mini social network with your most dedicated customers. And then there's group lists, which are kind of open to everybody to join, whereas I think you have to invite people to a broadcast list. The group list also has a limit, and you can broadcast updates to it. And then I think that people can interact with it, they can reply and whatnot. Um, and then the next sort of most popular social network I would say is Twitter. Um, and Twitter's main function is tweets, which are short 280 character posts that go into the global Twitter stream. Um, Twitter is useful for a lot of things. Twitter is very popular in the media world, so it's very media centric, but you can have Twitter ads. You can network on Twitter. Um, a lot of my most valuable business relationships have come through people I've met through Twitter. It's one of the ways I ended up working for Black Knight. In fact, that's where I met McKaylee. I met him on Twitter many years ago. You can also follow trends on Twitter, and then you can see what the world is talking about, the zeitgeist. You can see what is being discussed, and then you can make social media content that kind of follows that. And Twitter advertising is a little different than Facebook advertising. It's a little more affordable, but it's a little more targeted in who you're trying to reach. Another one that's very popular is Pinterest. It's basically a visual social network similar to Instagram, but the big difference here is that there are plenty of links. So when people pin an image, they link to the original place that it goes, and and you create pin boards of your interests, and there's pin boards you can follow, and you can follow big brands, and has a very global footprint, and it's a social network that's basically designed to show things off. So it's a great place to sell things because people are always looking for ideas on things to buy, whether it's for interior decoration or it's a new thing they want to buy. And then now you can have sponsored pins, sponsored ads, and then there are, just like the other social networks, there are big influencers on Pinterest who, if they share your thing, it will be seen by a lot of people and it can lead to sales for you. Now, I just rattled on a lot of social networks there. And so it's like, how do you choose which social networks to focus on? Um, and there's not an easy answer to that, but basically, focus on the ones where you think your customers are, or also the customers you want to reach are that you haven't reached already. So, I mean, everybody should be on Facebook if they're a small business or even a large business. Um, if your business sells pretty things or is in a pretty location, then definitely do an Instagram page. Should you be on Twitter? Probably. Really, those are the three. If I was going to say invest time in any of those, it would be those three. But it really depends on the business that you have and what you're trying to do on social media. And there are plenty of other platforms as well. There's YouTube, which vloggers are a big thing now, and informational videos, and YouTube is huge. And that's a whole different market that's completely different than all the other social networks. Then there's LinkedIn, which is like Facebook, but for professionals. So if you are a if you're looking for corporate clients or business to business stuff, then LinkedIn is a place to spend time on. If you're a business, you can have a page there. You can, people can follow it. You can post updates. It works very similar to our social networks, but the idea is that it's for business people. It's for people in their careers. It's LinkedIn has sort of replaced the CV and the resume in the modern world. You check LinkedIn first. The newest kid on the block with social networks is TikTok, which is the short little videos and the app from the Chinese company ByteDance. Despite many misgivings people have about TikTok and how the US government feels about TikTok, it's still growing massively. And there are people with millions of followers and influencers on there. And it's the same with Snapchat, which is, I've not heard much about Snapchat lately, but apparently Snapchat's doing very well. It's another thing where you can set up a profile and you can broadcast to people who want to follow you. But it's a very specific thing. And then there are social networks that are always bubbling up and that we don't even know about yet, or it's constantly changing. But the key thing here is to not be overwhelmed. Focus on Facebook first. That's really the first place you should start. We also recommend that every business that's doing social media should have a blog. For those who don't know what a blog is, a blog is basically a small website where you publish articles in a chronological order. And the best example I can think of offhand is look at the Black Knight blog. It's at blackknight.blog, where we post about the domain and hosting industry and things that we think are relevant to the Black Knight customer base. We like to think of blogs as a sort of mini social network that is controlled by you. And then all the content you post on this little mini social network, you can then easily share to other social networks through automation. So if you post a blog post and you link it to Twitter and Facebook, it will automatically share those posts to Twitter and Facebook. And then you will have, that helps make the content creation easier. It helps make things a little easier. And then the people who really want to follow you can subscribe to you directly, and then they control when they read it, not Mark Zuckerberg controls when they read it. There's no algorithms, and you have a lot more options for marketing. So always set up a blog, get followers on it, and you'll be surprised at how much success you'll have. Now, when you get on social media and you want to have an overall strategy and really hit the ground running, you need to have a tool for scheduling posts in advance. Because if you are just focusing on posting things when you feel like it or throughout the day based on what's happening on social media, you're going to constantly be chasing your tail, and you're going to be behind the zeitgeist because you didn't think in advance. So there are several tools for doing this. Hootsuite is a good tool, Sprout Social. I use later.com, which is free enough for what I use it for. Black Knight uses HubSpot, which we use for a lot of other things as well. And then you can also manually schedule posts if you want on Twitter and Facebook and the other social networks as well. But if you have a tool that allows you to bulk upload posts, schedule them out, and then reshare them later on, it's a very handy tool for interaction. Now, strategy time. So think about where your customers are and do some research. There are plenty of tools that do that. A newish tool that might help, it's called SparkToro by the guy that used to run SEO Moz. It'll help you identify where people are talking about your industry and vertical. Google it, do some searches on the social network, see if people on Facebook are also selling the widgets that you sell, and just do some research. Find out where your customers are, set the pages up, and get going. Setting up the accounts is easy. It's always free to set it up. The social networks try to make it easy. There are apps on your phone you can use to manage them. And then think about what you can post, how often, and on what schedule, and how much time you want to spend a week doing this. Because it's easy to get sucked into this and to have to spend so much time doing social media that you wonder what other aspect of your business isn't going to grow. Um, Also, don't just set it up and forget about it. We've seen this countless times where you set up the page, you post, hot and heavy for a few weeks, and then you kind of just forget about it. Well, when you forget about it, the people who followed you will notice that. And what will happen is people will message your Facebook page, but you haven't been checking it. So they don't get a response in a timely fashion, and then they go buy the widget from somebody else. So it's important to monitor the page. Get the apps that Facebook and the other social networks provide so that you can get notifications when people message you, and you can keep up with how people are interacting with on the page, so you can control the message and keep customers happy. And then I'm going to say it again. The goal of any social media strategy should be to get them on your website, whether that's to buy something, to learn about something, or to sign up for your email newsletter. Get them on your website, because remember, Facebook and the other social networks, they look out for Facebook and themselves. Don't rely on one platform for long-term business growth, because it's a recipe for disaster. I've lived it. I mean, I used to have a t-shirt business where every week I would post a new t-shirt. I would sell hundreds I would post it on Facebook. I'd sell hundreds, had massive growth. And then Facebook changed their algorithms so that you had to start paying for reach. The margins on t-shirts did not allow me to do that. And now I sell one or two t-shirts a month. So it's it's Facebook only, and the other social networks only look out for themselves. They know keenly that the users are the customer and the businesses that use their platforms are the customer. And while the end user doesn't have to pay to use these services, they get free entertainment. As a business, it's not free for you. You need to have a strategy, be willing to pay, have a marketing budget, and have some success from it, but don't rely on that success for long-term growth, because it's a recipe for disaster for your business. So I think with that, we will go to questions.
Thanks for that, Donovan. Wow, you really did cover everything there.
I tried.
That was awesome. Thank you very much for that. Just a quick question for you, I guess, like in terms of your own social media pages that you have, like you mentioned, you have such a big following. Like, how long did it take you to get that following, or how do you go about gaining followers or engaging with people to reach out to them, I guess?
Okay. Well, my biggest page I started in 2011, so it's almost 10 years old now. And when we started it, we didn't have that huge of a following, but we slowly started building followers, and then I think by 2015 we had like 40 or 50,000 fans in the niche that the page is for, and then it just exploded based on stuff we had that went viral, which is when something you post gets really popular and shared very widely, and we just gained so many followers. Now our page growth is very stagnant because we're not actively building the profiles anymore, because, as I said, reach has declined so much that it doesn't really pay for us to spend time growing the followings. More it just makes sense to market to the following we have that we can afford to. So
for somebody that's just starting out, then I guess what would your advice to them be to grow the followings? Is it just to be consistent and kind of stay posting and engage with customers? And
yeah, just post, stay engaged with customers, and then to grow it, I would run ads, because you can promote the page to you can pay to promote it to grow the followers. I would do that as well. And you can target it. So if say you're in a specific geographic area, you can target just for the area where you're based. That way you're not getting followers in Timbuktu, you're getting followers in Carlo. And then just grow the following that you need for the business to succeed.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, it takes time and effort, and as you said, your time can't be seen as free either, so you have to be smart and kind of use those scheduling tools that you discussed earlier.
It's a long-term investment in your marketing, so and it will take time for it to pay off, but you should be doing it.
Just another question for you then. How can businesses use social networks for customer support?
That's a good question. There are several ways. One is monitoring. So the various social media tools will let you monitor for mentions of your business. So you should monitor for that. So you can see if people are complaining about you or asking you questions. People will message you on social networks and ask you questions or have customer complaints. So it's important to monitor those things so that you can do customer support. And you shouldn't solve the whole problem on the social networks. You should get them off and onto whatever platform you use for managing customer relations, like Zendesk or their CRM, because you don't want to be sharing private info on these social networks. But even you can see, how like major corporations do it. Like more often than not, if you make a complaint, like usually within half an hour, someone from their social media team will respond to you and try and solve the problem. Now they can't always solve it, but at least they try. So you should be doing the same. You should be monitoring. And
I guess those tools that you mentioned earlier, Jonathan, the Hootsuite or any of those ones, like they would allow you to see messages coming in from all of the platforms at once, which makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. Hootsuite's really great at that because it will kind of aggregate all that into one place. Now, Hootsuite's not free, but it's a very powerful tool, and if you consider it as another marketing cost, then it's worth having because it does that monitoring for you, and you can keep up with things.
Yeah, I guess that the main thing is to log in every day and kind of keep an eye on it and engage.
Just don't forget about it.
Yeah.
Guys, we've got a question from Sean there in chat as well. There are actually two questions there from Sean.
You want to read them?
So I don't know. Can you see those? Can you see those, Jonathan? So Sean's first question. It's in the main chat here. His first question is, he's just wondering: is it possible to see the social media algorithms and how they function? Are they transparent?
No, they are not, and it's not really possible. That's the problem. Is there are the commentators who kind of make guesses on how the algorithms operate, but it's really, and they're changing every day. Especially things like Facebook, they're constantly tweaking their algorithms, and so they're not transparent. And when you pay for ads, though, it is somewhat more transparent because what happens is they give you data on the reach that your ads have had, the interactions with it. And if you look at a Facebook ad report, there are tons of metrics that they're measuring. So you can see how it's doing and how it's working. But as far as the raw algorithms, you only really get the data that you're paying for. So for organic reach, they'll tell you how much you reached, but they won't give you much more information than that. But if you pay for reach, they'll give you a bit more information.
Yeah, a little bit more insight into what you're spending your money on, I guess.
Yeah.
It just kind of reminds me, I don't know if anyone that's on here has watched it, but that new Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
They talk a lot about the algorithms and how
yeah, if you want a good rundown of how these networks
it's a really
work,
good watch.
It's a bit ham-fisted with the fake drama in it, but it is a great explanation for how these networks work and how they sort of, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but how they advertise to people.
How they influence.
Yeah, how they keep you interacted.
Yeah, and they do. They try and grab our attention. I guess that's another thing for people to keep in mind is the amount of marketing messages and social posts and everything that people are being bombarded with every day. So if you can just kind of keep people engaged and it makes all the difference. I think Con had another manipulate was the word, Sean. Yeah, I think you could be right. I think Con had a question for you there as well, Jonathan.
I had just one, Jonathan, if you have time, maybe to expand a little bit more on the 80-20 rule as you described it there, how maybe businesses don't always have to be pushing out content which is about their products and what they're selling, but that there are also stories that can be told related to that and of interest, whether it's funny, whether it's funny memes or funny or entertaining things or things that their audience will find interesting. If you have anything more to say about that, I thought it would be interesting. And I suppose it really comes down to knowing who your customers are.
Exactly. And I'll give some great examples of the Black Knight social media accounts. We want to sell domains and hosting, yes, but we post funny hosting memes, and we post stuff on our blog that isn't necessarily salesy, that's more informational, that we then share on our social media accounts. And we also we have a big platform to sort of influence the conversation as well about the domain and hosting industry. So we can make a statement that isn't selling anything, and it will be seen by people. So it's good to know your audience as intimately as you can, because then you'll know what they want to see, and then they won't mind it so much when you're promoting something.
Sorry, Jonathan, I was on mute there. Yeah, I think when you're kind of seen to be educating, and it kind of puts you in a position where you're kind of the turn to or a market leader, then people kind of consider you to be the expert.
Yeah.
Which is,
and if you're
makes you more trustworthy, I think is important as well.
Yeah, and if you're a small business and you're only looking to get a following locally, then post about local things, not just your business. If you're a small business based in Carlow, post about Carlow stuff. It's a beautiful area, share pictures of the area, let people have civic pride. And it's that way when you do sell something, it's like, oh, okay, it's fine.
Yeah, you know where you're dealing with them.
Yeah.
Sorry, Colin has another comment there. In recent weeks, social media seems to have been flooded by conspiracy theories from anti-5G to anti-vaccine to anti-mask. How do you control these bots and trolls from taking over your groups or comments, etc.?
That's one of the reasons why I say don't set it up and forget about it, because you have to be monitoring the messages and comments on your page to delete that stuff. Now, Facebook is pretty good about filtering a lot of that stuff out, at least on your own page, but you're just going to have to monitor the comments. Now, as far as your stuff being next to that kind of stuff in people's news feeds, that's just like, you have no control over that.
Yeah.
And
I guess when you engage with stuff, it will show you things that are kind of relevant to what you've engaged with.
Exactly. And that's the we're getting into the problem of social networks, is that they amplify this kind of thing. And really, as a business owner, if you have nothing to do with these things, then you don't really have anything to fear. But as a user yourself, you may be frustrated and fearful of these things. But
so could you delete those messages then, Jonathan, if they're commenting on your?
Oh yeah, you can control who comments on your page and who messages your page. If it's spam, you delete it. You can hide it, you can delete it. If you get messages in your Facebook inbox, you can delete them, report them as spam.
Yeah.
You can report them to Facebook so that their algorithm learns that this is garbage, so that it it helps others people's pages. So yeah, there are tools within it to help mitigate it, but yeah.
Great stuff. Okay, I think I'm just conscious of time there as well. I know everybody's super busy, so I'm going to give it I'll wrap it up there. Just to say thank you, Jonathan, for your time today. That was really insightful, and I think really helpful. It's great when we have a little bit of engagement and a little bit of a chat, so people can bounce ideas off each other. If anybody does want to look back, all of the webinars have been recorded, so you can go on to bk.ie/webinar2. We did a first series of webinars a couple of months back there, also at bk.ie/webinar. If anybody does want to go back and look at them, it's kind of everything from just setting up the website, setting up some e-commerce, And then, as I said earlier, from search engine optimization, shipping, click and collect, all those things that are really important at the moment. And again, as Jonathan said, it's important to be on social media, but I think the main thing is to bring everybody back to your website where you have control and you can interact with your customers there. Thank you all for joining us. If anybody does have any questions or anything like that, as always, we're on the phone. We are on blacknight.com. We have live chat. We're all working from home again, but if anybody does have any questions, we're there for you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.